Welcome to Whiskey Uncut. I'm your host, Paul.
It's good to see you, Paul. It's been a couple weeks.
I'm joined by James. It has been a couple weeks. Oh dear. Do you hear an echo again? Or is that? I think it's in my imagination.
Is it just PTSD from last week's echo?
Yeah, probably.
Well, hopefully somebody in the chat will tell us if it's echoey.
Yeah. If it is again, I'm baffled. But the audio is being recorded clean this time
good.
separately. So at least the audio podcast will be fine. But yeah. So
yeah, we had a couple weeks off here. We had Valentine's Day, and then
you were gone.
No, you had work.
You
You did adult things for a week, and we couldn't talk about whiskey.
Well, it happens. So here's what we want to talk about today. Our topic is going to be the...
Do we have some comments?
Oh, no echo here.
Ah, sweet.
Thanks,
All
Ray.
right, good. Thank you.
So our topic today is going to be whiskeys we regret buying. Because believe it or not, we do have regrets. As positive as we may be on almost all whiskeys, because we're whiskey promiscuous and love many of them, there are quite a few that we have regretted purchasing for one reason or another.
Yeah, and I think what I liked about it, took me a while to go through these, like my collection, and kind of figure out what I wanted to bring, but each one has a certain lesson to it that I think will be valuable for folks as we move through the podcast too.
So we'll go over our whiskey news, just some new releases that are coming out real quick, and then we will get into the topic, James. So our first one, these are from Whiskey Advocate, is Green River Kentucky Straight Rye. And this is going to be a blended rye, 4 years old, ABV 47.5%, and priced at $35.
And I've actually heard really good things about the Green River rye. I mean, Green River bourbon has had a good reputation for a while, right? And we talked about how they're doing a little bit more sourcing, so you're starting to see their product pop up in a lot of places, but the rye has gotten some solid reviews. And Paul, who do you think has maybe a single barrel of Green River rye tucked away somewhere?
Ooh.
Who do you think that would be?
You?
That would be me.
Nice. That's pretty funny. I didn't even realize that.
Yeah, so that's going to be coming out later this year. We're doing some fun things with it, though. But I was able to get my hands on one about a year ago. And so that's been sitting around for a while. I think we're going to be releasing it in about 5 or 6 years. So it'll be a little bit older than what they're showing here as well. But I have to say I really liked it.
Well, I don't think I've tried their bourbon. I'm not positive, but I don't think
it's not available around here, so you probably haven't had it.
Okay.
And if you did, it was probably in a blended sourced kind of thing that you didn't know that it was in there. But I've had a couple single barrels from them, and they're outstanding. So my guess is the rye at $35 is probably a pretty good bargain.
Yeah, and well, that's also one thing I was just going to say is, like, it's nice to see someone releasing something that's not $150 or whatever. Like, so many releases now are just premium stuff.
Well, and this is
like very few people are still offering, like, coming out with more.
Yeah, and this is a blended rye. It's 4 years old. You're only looking at 95 proof. So it makes sense. It's in the ballpark of what you would expect. And given that they're, producing a lot of volume for other people, they have a whole single barrel line that they're doing as well. It makes sense that they have kind of a baseline that's available.
Yep. This is going to be available across 26 states and a permanent addition to their lineup.
Nice.
Which is pretty cool. We've got Liz and Fred Flintstone in the chat with Josh Adams, Jonathan Richardson.
Oh, hey, Jonathan. How you doing?
Jonathan. Good to see you. Greg and Corncake.
Corncake's here.
Corncake's here, giving us the kissy emoji.
Nice. Thanks, Corncake.
Calling us the whiskey daddies. Fred Flintstone says he's got some of honey apple brandy and some 90% rye for us to try.
Oh, I'm in.
So
I like people who send samples.
Yeah.
You've immediately moved up to my favorite list. I like people who send samples.
Yeah, we'll have to figure out how to get in contact. Reach out on Facebook. Send us a message on Facebook.
Yeah, for sure.
And then we'll figure out how to get samples from you. So we have the Woodford Reserve Double Oaked 2024.
Oh, man.
This is a bourbon from Kentucky, non-age statement, ABV 45.2%, priced at $80.
For a
Release
375.
for a 375. Yeah. And this is going to be limited to Kentucky retailers and at the distillery. This expression represents a batch of Woodford Reserve double oak bourbon, charred oak finish bourbon, which undergoes an additional year-long charred oak finish and a heavily toasted, lightly charred new oak.
And Woodford is the one, we've talked about this before. They use very specific barrels for their double oak.
Yeah.
Like they're toasted and very, very light charred. So my guess is this is sort of a double version of that. So they're going back again to another new light char barrel to do it. But man, when I went to visit Woodford about 6 or 7 years ago, I did try one of the double doubles.
Mm-hmm.
And I wasn't that impressed with it. I felt like it was pretty heavy, especially when you're putting it at 90 proof. It comes across as simultaneously thin and like overly oaky. So it was just kind of weird.
So here's my thing though, is like the double oak is already so overly sweet.
Oh yeah.
I can't even imagine the double oaked. Like it just seems like either it's going to be really bitter or like crazy sweet. Somehow.
I remember it being very thin and very oaky. I don't remember it being overly sweet, but it's been a really, really long time since I tried it. But I mean, man, that's a reach, right? $80 for a 375. That's one of those, like, we'll talk about this in a second. That's one of those impulse buys that, you're at the distillery, you're taking a tour and you sort of like make an exception.
Yeah. We've got the Buzzard's Roost American whiskey hailing from Indiana. Age 3 years old, ABV 52.5%, price $40, availability nationwide. This whiskey is made from a mash bill of 75% corn, 21% rye, 4% malted barley, and master blender Jason Bronner tapped into Buzzard Roost's library of previously used char number 1 barrels with proprietary toast profiles. I need distilleries to stop calling like their char or their toast proprietary. Like,
yeah, I don't know what that means.
Like, what does that mean? Just because you're the only person that toasts your barrel for 17.4 minutes, like,
it's got to be some sort of like a specific time, like you said, right?
Right.
Or maybe
that's all I can think.
Or maybe there's a depth profile that they're looking for with it, or something like that.
But how would they know it's proprietary?
It's not. They just don't. That's another way of saying they don't want to tell you how they chart it.
Yeah. Source 3-year-old whiskey. While the whiskey's mash bill fits that of a bourbon, the used barrels give it the designation of American whiskey. So even though it's a bourbon during the distillation process,
it's
basically
a bourbon mash bill, used barrels,
but it becomes American whiskey. Yep. We also have Nelson Brothers Maple Cask Finish, which is that's not Nelson Greenbrier.
It is.
Is it? Is it? Oh, that looks like their label's different. Maybe they've changed
it is. They've changed. Once they got away from like the Bell Mead kind of style thing, they've gone to the Nelson Brothers. That's what they do for most of their products now with the bourbon.
Okay. Yeah. Dude, that sounds amazing.
So this one, when I saw this pop up, I was pretty excited because Nelson, when it was the Bell Mead, they're one of the few people who I thought did the honey cask properly.
Right.
Like it was not cloyingly sweet. It was well done. And particularly, I think the second release was really spot on. So, and they're good at finishing. I mean, they've done some really, really well done finished bourbons. So I'm kind of curious about this. I haven't tried a whole lot of their bourbon. I took a sip of it. It tasted young to me. But of course, you can make up for a lot of that with a cask finish.
Yeah. I mean, I just remember at the distillery I tried all their products, and their cognac finish really stuck out as being super good.
And that's one of the few cognac finished bourbons I like.
Yeah. And then their own distillate was pretty great too. So
look, this is what, Tennessee, Kentucky, and Indiana distillate.
Yep.
So they're pulling from a variety of different sources here to pull this off. But I would be really interested in this.
And this is going to be ABV 52.9%, price $125, availability limited. So I mean, I feel like $125 is a good price point, and that's a good ABV, especially for a limited edition.
It's a risk. I mean, if you're somebody who likes sweet product,
yeah,
it's probably less of a risk for you. But if you don't like cloyingly sweet, you're going to run into the risk of getting something that tastes like candy.
Because this is maple syrup cast, not like maple like maple, the wood.
No,
casks.
this would
It's
this would
maple
probably be
syrup.
a cask, that
Yeah.
they aged maple syrup in, dump the maple syrup out, and
Right.
then so it's essentially like drizzling maple syrup into your bourbon.
All right, we've got Michael Tor, the original 5-year-old, and I'm sure that is not how it's pronounced. Single malt from Scotland, but if that's Gaelic, and I did not look up ahead of time how to pronounce it,
I expect you
Your
to
guess
know
is
how
as
to
good as
pronounce
mine.
every Scotch name
You know,
that we come across.
I know a
Come on,
lot. I
Paul.
know a lot of them, but not that
I
one.
can pronounce all the bourbon names.
Good for you. Age 5 years old, ABV 50%, price $75, 1,200 bottles for the U.S. So
That's pretty
a
limited.
Pretty
in the
limited
US.
release.
So, what do you think of a 5-year for $75 for a Scotch?
Well, they've got 3. Nope, 4. Yeah, it's okay. So they have 4 releases.
So this is all a big series.
Yeah. So they also have the Chinkapin. I don't know.
Good job.
The Sherry.
Ooh,
Oh, I
the
pronounced that one right.
The sherry one,
The Sherry
5-year-old.
one. And the Turbo 2023 edition,
Now,
which
these
is
are-
only 600 bottles.
And these are all
$75.
all $75 and all 100 proof.
Yep. Well, 48
Oh,
or
48.
96.
So a couple
100,
96 and a
100 or
couple hundreds.
96.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, here it is. Mikol Tor is how it's pronounced. It's pronounced Mikol Tor. A new range of 5-year-old peated single malts from the Glenallachie distillery, created in small batches by master distiller Billy Walker. All right, so these are coming off the tiny still, James.
They're the
They-
tiny.
They have a
still.
tiny still, just like Buffalo Trace.
Perfect.
These are so the turbo is peated to 71 parts per million.
And so where does that fall? I don't know. Shit
That's
about
very
peating.
high.
That's pretty
Yeah.
high. Okay.
The others are at 35. So, other than the turbo, which is 71. So 35 is just below Lagavulin, Lafroig. Those are all like 40, 50 range. But 70 is above pretty much all of them, except once you get into the heavily over the like super peated class, which is like Octomore. And Ardbeg Beastie, and like the ones that are intentionally over peated.
So this one will be pretty beefy. On the
Pretty
peat side.
smoky. They're all going to be smoky, yeah. The first one was first fill bourbon barrels, then new American oak and rye casks. The sherry one was initially matured in bourbon, and then guess what? Sherry.
And then sherry. Shocking.
While the Chinkapin one was also initially matured in bourbon barrels before being filled into new Chinkapin casks. Do you even know what that is?
I have no idea.
I want to see.
All right, we're gonna check this out.
Hopefully it's nothing terrible. The golden or giant evergreen Chinkapin, some sort of fruit or
It's a-
plant.
It said oak.
Someone just
Nope.
someone's at my front door. It
Oak.
does say oak.
Yeah. So
Huh.
it must be a variety of oak that I'm not familiar with.
I don't know. We'll look it up. Get back to you next time. I need to go see what's happening at my door real quick because I don't know if my wife.
Should I just entertain people?
Yeah, just entertain people.
Okay.
Do a song and dance.
This is what happens when you do live shows. Uh-oh.
It's okay.
Oh.
I was getting a beer delivery from my
Beer
dad.
delivery. Nice, nice. It's a nice little gift pack.
Yeah, these are actually honestly amazing beers. They're Carmelite triple. It's a
Oh,
Belgian triple. It's insanely good.
nice.
Yeah.
Okay.
Highly recommended if you're a beer drinker.
Deal.
All right. Sorry about
All right,
that.
so what are we on here?
We are on. Did you read Vortex's comment, or could you not?
I can't see it from here because I'm like 1,000 years old. There's no way I can see that, man. I can barely see the emojis.
Oh yeah. Okay. I was just gonna say, as long as we had a break, he said, I don't get the hype behind Green River. I've only had their regular bourbon, so nothing in the realm of high proof single barrels or limited releases. It competes at its price, but it didn't blow him away.
Yeah, I mean, I would agree. I think whenever you have a batch product or you have a blended product that like that and it's at lower proof, it's not like they're using their premium barrels, right?
Right.
They're going to save all of that for a lot of the source products. They're going to save it for the single barrels. And I think, we've seen that before with a lot of the smaller distilleries that we've had come on. There's a big difference between their base products and their single barrel products. And that's the same thing with Green River. There's no question.
All right. And then Lodestar from Indiana, ABV 45%. Indiana is they're starting to crop up a lot.
Well, it's hard to tell whether this is produced in Indiana or it's MGP. My guess is it's MGP.
But they're just actually stating, that's a fair point.
Yeah.
I thought maybe Indiana was getting some other distilleries.
I don't think so. I just assume when I see Indiana, it's MGP.
ABV 45%, price $45. Release January. And this is the inaugural Lodestar. It's backed by Diageo's Distill Ventures, which provides early financial support and a year of mentorship for founders looking to build the next big spirits brand. Oh, that's what I need to do. I need to get Diageo to just give me a bunch of money to start a new whiskey brand.
Kick the crap out of Two Souls.
Yeah, well, hey, I have always said that Diageo is my favorite company, and I love the fact that they control so much of the whiskey market. It's actually a really positive thing.
Oh, it is?
Yeah, it's great. And the way, James, the way they promote consistency with artificial coloring across their products.
It's fantastic.
And chill filtration. It's a really, really great
How
thing.
they consistently screw up all the products. It's great.
No, make them better, James. And then finally, Devil's River Series Style Rye, Origin Texas, age 5 years old, ABV 50%, price $80. And this rye is distilled entirely using Texas-grown grains. 51% Brasetto rye, a hybrid rye strain developed for high yields. 45% number one yellow dent corn, and 4% malted barley.
Now, I have heard of Devil's River. They have a pretty good reputation. I don't know that I've ever had their rye before. But of course, Texas has been making a name for themselves in whiskey for quite some time. Yeah. They do good products. Most people are releasing it with a decent age statement now. And I think it ages kind of interestingly in Texas. Well, the proof goes up pretty quickly. Things dry out.
Early on, a lot of their stuff was way over oaked. Because,
Yeah. And that was a lot of like Balcones and stuff like that, like when they first started, especially their American single malt. And others were a little bit dense. But I think they've dialed it in. They figured it out. And stuff like we've talked to a couple different companies in Texas. I really like what Texas whiskey's doing.
Yeah.
The key though, the kicker is they're always expensive. Like it's really hard to find. Like how much was Balcones single malt? It's like $120.
Yeah, like $100 something. Yeah.
Everything that comes out of Texas is expensive. So
and all the Lone Star stuff or Garrison Brothers
are all very expensive.
Are all $100 plus for 3-year-old whiskey. So
yeah.
All right, so let's get into our topic.
All right.
And so talking about whiskeys that we regret. So do you want to start? Because we already started sipping on this one.
Yeah.
So we could start off with this one. And this, as helpful as it will be to show this to the camera.
You can't see anything.
Which you can't see anything, is Watershed barrel strength. Geez. I don't know if there's other text on here. Limited release. It's black text. For those listening, it's black text on a black label, and it's impossible to read in this light.
Yes. So this is part of, did you ever hear of the Eve's Blind series?
No.
So Marion Eves went around and she hand-selected a few casks from a variety of different craft distilleries, and then she did her own unique blend. And it was part of this like Eve's Blind live thing where she'd send out samples, like blind samples, and people would taste them and talk about them and rate them and things like that. And so she did this gimmicky thing with the labels where the labels are all black, and it was very exclusive, limited numbers. I think I had to sign up for a lottery to get a chance to buy the bottle, and they were $150. And that's steep. Yeah, and this is painful to me because I really love Watershed and I like what they do.
We've given them a lot of awards.
We've given them a ton of awards. And so this is less about the quality of the product than it is more about kind of the gimmicky hype aspect of it and the cost on this. So this was me kind of getting caught up in one, my love for Watershed, and two, sort of the hype train that was going around the Eve's Blind thing at the time. And I went ahead and got in the lottery, won it, paid $150, picked it up when I was in Columbus, doing a couple other things for the business. And I don't like it. Like, it's fine, but I've tasted 20 single barrels from Watershed that I think are better. And I've had a lot of other special releases, like their uncut unfiltered, that I think is a lot better. And it's just, I don't know, it was just very disappointing to me. For $150, it was not worth that money for me. And you're talking, 2 to 3 times what some of their single barrel stuff are.
So you said this is blended with stuff from other distilleries?
No, it's all from Watershed.
But it's a blend, not a single barrel.
Yeah, it's like a 3 to 5 cask blend.
Right. So I really don't understand what sorry, I just like choked a little bit. I don't understand what the value proposition here is, because it's good. It's not a bad whiskey.
No.
But there's no special cask finishing. There's like,
the special part of it was Mary and Eve's.
Right.
That was it. It's
just that she picked it.
Yep. And she went around, she went to St. Augustine and she had one in St. Augustine. There's a couple other small distilleries we went to where she did these kind of blends.
Right.
And so it was really just capitalizing on her name.
Right. Okay. That's what I misheard. I miss when you were saying she went to these other distilleries and did it. I misheard that as she grabbed barrels from these other small producers and blended them together. Not that she did a blend at each one separately.
No, that's what she did. She did a blend at each one separately.
Right. Yeah.
So she went to Watershed and she bought 3 barrels and blended them and made her own Watershed.
Right. Her own Watershed. Yeah.
Yeah. And so that's what she did to kind of, come up with unique profiles.
I just I get it if, imagine if like Fred No was like, I'm going to do a Watershed release, Watershed release? Is that
Release?
What? Release? A Watershed release. Like, people would pay out the wazoo to get, something from Fred No or, any other big name in the industry. But that doesn't make it any better. It's still Watershed's product. And like you said, we just sent out for the tasting, people on the tasting kit, which there's a spot available still for Patreon members. We just sent out the Watershed Uncut Unfiltered, which won our best bourbon last year.
Yep.
For season 3, and that is just a better product.
And it's half the price. Yeah. So this was me taking kind of a chance. At the time, Mary and Eve's name was going around a lot. She was kind of working on multiple different projects. There was a lot of buzz around this. There was a lot of live views and a lot of people going on the live streams to watch it. And so I kind of got caught up in it, and I liked Watershed. I generally liked what Mary and Eve's had done previously. Although she had been working with a lot of pretty young distillate, so it was kind of hard to tell. But, I liked both ends of it. And so I was like, hey, I'll give it a shot. I paid $150 for it, and I just was immediately not super, super happy with it. Just because, again, compared to all the other single barrels I've had from them, I thought this was inferior compared to those. It tastes younger. It doesn't taste as complex to me. It's kind of one note. I just wasn't blown away by it.
It's definitely hot too at 65.2%, but I mean it drinks like 65.2%.
And that's the other thing is there's very few Watershed cast strength stuff that you're going to get that's 130 proof.
Right.
Like that's not too common with them. Even in their single barrels, they don't get that high very often. So maybe that was part of the draw too. But when I'm paying $150 for a bottle, I expect it to be stellar, especially if it's coming from a craft distillery that I know makes really good product. So it was just kind of a letdown for me.
Yeah. And again, it's only because their other stuff's so good and so much, is so good relative to the price point that this. So I think my first one is Eagle Rare 10-year-old.
Oh.
My biggest regret purchase of 2022.
But this is more of the story rather than the product.
Well,
right?
it's both, right? Yeah. So, and it's a similar vein, right? I drove, I saw someone post that this bottle was available on a shelf, you know, and this was 2 years ago. I've started seeing them on shelves a couple of times since then, but it was still slim pickings a few years ago. And to me, it's implied if someone posts something and it's just on the shelf, like next to everything else, that it's going to be normal price, like normal retail price.
And they didn't put a picture of the price.
And they didn't put a picture of the price on it. And so, and it didn't have a price on the, like when I went to the store, it was, the price wasn't labeled.
There was no shelf tag.
No, there was no shelf tag.
Because that's tricky.
Right. Because I think they had just set it up there.
Okay. Yeah.
And so, like, in my mind, if you're texting a Facebook group or a group of people and you're like, hey guys, this bottle is at so-and-so, I just got one, and you don't say like what the sale price is, it must be retail. Although now in retrospect, my thought is anytime someone gets something like this for retail, they got to like make sure to shove it down everybody's throat. So I should have known that he didn't specifically like post a picture of the receipt.
Yeah, he's like, look, it's $25.
Right, because everyone always posts a picture of the receipt and they're like, aha, I got it for retail. So I should have known. But I assumed, and I drove over there, and it took me like an hour and a half because there's two similar stores, and I went to the one and they're like, oh no, we don't have any more, but we do have some at our other store. And then I had to drive all the way like out one town over to go get it, and during rush hour, and I get there and it's like $80.
And at that point, it's sunk cost fallacy.
Right. Yeah. I've already invested. I've invested my entire afternoon into acquiring
gas money and everything.
And my
like,
gas,
I can't leave without it at this point.
Yeah, I'm not going to drive all the way back and just not have it. So I bought it, and then I opened it up, and I'm like, damn, that's a $27 bottle of bourbon.
And you paid $80 for it.
I paid $80.
And you drove all over to go pay. So you drove all over the place to go pay like 2.5 times what it should be, what it should cost. Awesome. So here's my question to you. Like, at least with the Mary and Eve's one, like I hadn't tried it. Right. I didn't know what to expect. I thought there was the possibility that it could be stellar because it was associated with Eve's blind.
Hey,
but you tried Eagle Rare before.
No. But James, it's a single barrel. It could have been an incredible single barrel.
Oh, come on. Like, have you seen a ton? Like, have you ever had one Eagle Rare bottle and you're like, damn, that's a good one. Like, that's a good one.
It's just like Elijah Craig's barrel proof, man.
It is not
people
like Elijah Craig's barrel proof. It is not. I applaud your optimism on that one. I really do.
I'm always suspicious when they call Eagle Rare 10 a single barrel because like they taste so similar.
They taste so similar.
Like,
yeah.
Okay, but that said, this is a classic example of how your memory tricks you, right? Because it had been probably 6 years since I had gotten to try Eagle Rare 10. And when I had it before, I was very new into whiskey, and I remember it being my favorite bourbon.
Yeah.
And so that was why when I saw it, I was like, I have to go out of my way to get it. Like, I've never had an opportunity to get one. This should tell you, by the way, what level I am in the whiskey community that like in like the 10 years I've been drinking whiskey, I'm excited that I got a chance to buy Eagle Rare 10.
Oh my God, you're a newbie.
You know,
you're
like,
a newbie.
I have zero access to anything allocated. But you know, and I was just like, I can see why I liked it when I was new.
It's simple.
It's
right?
simple.
It's not challenging.
But any
stretch of the.
But it was such a letdown. So
and you paid $80 for it.
$80.
And you drove all over. I love that. That's one of my favorite Paul stories is like, I can see you going into the first store and you're like, oh shit. Well, I'm here. I might as well drive to the next one. And then you get there and it's $80 and you're like, okay, well, whatever. I'm just going to buy it anyway. I've done all this crap. I might as well buy it.
Yeah.
And then you end up with an $80 bottle of Eagle Rare that you don't drink.
Jonathan Richardson writes in, throwing a grenade in here. Eagle Rare is a perfect bourbon.
Oh no, not that one again.
Quoting AS, which we all know is Andrew Sims, who's been on the show.
Yes.
So I'll follow that up with my next one.
Okay.
And then I'll punt back to you.
Okay.
So my next one is something that I had my brother bring back from me from Japan, which is the Nika 12. Now this is a premium blended whiskey. Premium, James.
It's premium.
The emblem of Nika whiskey, the art of blending and craftsmanship. So did you try this yet?
I have not.
Here,
No.
go ahead and pour yourself some. So basically, Nika 12 is it's made by Nika, but as far as I understand, it's one of the ones that's suspect on being actually Japanese whiskey.
Right. And if it's not that, then it's being produced where? Is it in Scotland or US?
Yeah,
or?
Scotland or yeah. And then like it's like a blend of stuff. And so, Japanese whiskey is a term only recently, last year or the year before, became a protected term.
Right.
And even then, it's still an optional thing for.
Oh, really?
So like, distilleries they just have to like opt into labeling their stuff as Japanese whiskey. It's not like the other distilleries have to label their stuff as not Japanese whiskey. If that makes sense.
Right.
So it's like it's still like not a protected term like Scotch whiskey. Like it's not at that level.
Right.
Or bourbon or Kentucky straight.
But they're at
bourbon.
least starting to give some backbone to it if you want to come out and say
Right.
Yeah. So it's almost like tiers.
Right. And so pretty much the only way something is legit Japanese whiskey is if you go to the distillery's website and they specifically say like it's actually made here on this whiskey. This to me is like a classic example as a blended whiskey of it has grain whiskey in it because it's not blended malt. And to me, it's just incredibly boring.
So if it's a grain whiskey and it's sourced, it's certainly coming from Scotland.
Most likely, yeah.
Yeah. And so is this available? This is a Japanese only release?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay. And how much did you pay for it?
I want to say, I mean, it's hard to remember like with the conversion and everything. I want to say it's probably like $80.
Okay.
$80 or $90. Yeah.
Yeah. This is the most nothing tasting whiskey that there's
I know.
nothing to it. It's just like it tastes like hint water. Like if Hint made a whiskey flavor
Or like LaCroix.
yeah.
Yeah.
Like if they made a whiskey flavor, that's what it would taste like.
Yeah, it's whiskey LaCroix, basically.
The nose is almost non-existent and it's really thin.
Yeah.
Which is disappointing because I generally like Nika age-stated products.
I know. And that's the thing is like my expectations were very high. And what I realized following that is like this is just like their baseline thing that they have. This is like this is just like what you would get at a bar there or something, like a normal bar, not like a whiskey bar.
Right.
It's the mass appeal product that they make. And
ooh, this is the Eagle Rare. Of
it is
of the
is
Nika line.
the perfect Japanese whiskey.
It is, yeah.
No, it's just like when you smell this, all you get is like a hint of fruity citrus zest, and that's it.
Yeah, it's a nondescript malt.
I mean, there's nothing you could pinpoint, really.
No, I give you credit because that is probably the most boring whiskey that we've had on the show in a really long time. Like, there's literally nothing to say about it except that it's whiskey.
Yeah, and then
there's a little bit of a fruitiness, but you're right. It's a vague kind of fruitiness, and then you just get that sort of like malty, grainy backbone.
Dude, it literally tastes like someone just wrote down what whiskey should be on paper, like fed it to Chat GPT,
and then they did.
And then Chat GPT like mixed up a whiskey. I mean, and what is it? It's like I don't even think they label the proof. 43%. Yeah. So it's thin. It's light. I mean.
And I would guess it was 80 proof. Like it drinks lighter than 86.
Honestly, the only thing you can actually taste or smell in this is a hint of peat. Like there's a little bit of smokiness.
Oh man, I even had a hard time finding that.
Yeah, I mean, it's hilarious because I would have always said like Johnny Walker, like Johnny Walker Red Label was the epitome.
Boring.
But this is like basically Johnny Walker Red Label. Yeah. I mean, it's at that level. And it was like $80.
And to be $80 and you add your brother to buy it there and lug it back.
Yep.
So there's a lot more effort going into it than just spending the $80.
Right. On the plus side, it doesn't taste bad.
No. No, like you could make
It
a
just
cocktail with
It
it.
just doesn't taste like anything.
No,
So,
except like whiskey flavored hint.
Yep.
Yeah, I think you could make a cocktail out of it, but it's sad when you go out of your way to like buy something that's unique and you spend $80 on it, and then it just becomes kind of a cocktail bottle. I noticed there's a nice layer of dust on top of this bottle, so it hasn't been off your shelf in a while, and I can see why. All right, do we want to move on to my next one?
Yep.
So my next one is an example of a good whiskey that I overreached for because of a previous release of it. So this is the lesson in this one. So this is going to be Lock, Stock, and Barrel 20 year.
ooh. Now see, this baffled me when he pulled this out because that's such a good whiskey.
But here's the kicker on it. So the reason I bought Lock, Stock, and Barrel 20 year.
And I'll just pour myself a generous helping while you talk.
You can do what you want. The reason I picked this one was because of how much I loved Lock, Stock, and Barrel 18. Like, to me, Lock, Stock, and Barrel... Oh, you're just dropping stuff all over the place.
Well, it's not my fault. The cork's broken in half.
Yeah, whatever. So Lock, Stock, and Barrel 18 still, in my opinion, is one of the better ryes that I've had. And we've had it on this show. We both love it. And most of my friends who love rye love the 18-year-old. It's sweet. It's rich. It's dense. It's everything that I want a premium aged rye whiskey to be. And these are all Canadian rye, correct? Lock, Stock, and Barrel 20 followed it. So I think I paid $170 or $180 for 18 for the 18 year. And I absolutely loved it. It was worth every penny to me. I wish I had bought 3 bottles at the time. This one came out and it was priced somewhere between $300 and $400.
Oh man,
so this is a distinct jump in price. I think I paid
2 years
for 2 years extra. I think I paid $330 for it, something like that. I looked it up today online. You can find it for $400, somewhere in that range. So this was a distinct price jump, and I was willing to pay it because of how much I liked the 18 year. I opened it up. And I was like, oh, crap. I still like the 18 better. So I paid like $150 more than the 18. The 18 was still on the shelf, and I bought this instead. And I don't like it nearly as much as the 18. It's not a bad rye by any stretch. It's good, but it's very dry. It's much more oak forward, and it doesn't have that kind of like sweet, chewy base that I just loved about the 18. So the lesson here for folks, my first lesson was don't buy into hype, right? This is the problem with special releases. Just because you like one special release doesn't mean you're going to like the next one. And it's not always better if it gets older.
Yeah.
Right? The wheelhouse for that one was very clearly 18.
Yeah.
And you get to 20, they've now released a 21 that's like $500. And so the only saving grace of this is that it prevented me from buying the damn 21 year. Like, that's the only saving grace. Like, I went to a bar and they had the 21 year for like $50 a pour, and I was like, no, I'm good. I'm good. Like, I know the perfect spot was at 18. So this was just more of a disappointment for me than it was. It's not a bad whiskey. It's just not worth $330. It's clearly not worth $150 more than the 18 year.
It's funny because I was just at Jigs the other day, and because I'm doing a tasting this upcoming weekend for him, and I saw he has a Lock, Stock, and Barrel 20 and a 21, I think, in his case. And I was like, oh, I wish you had the 18. And he's like, why? Like, all the hypes for that. And I'm like, it's better.
It's better. like, I don't care.
And I don't have $500. And he's like, you've got $500. I'm like, no, I don't.
I mean, can you see what I mean when you drink this, though?
Oh.
It's not sweet.
So
it's dry and oaky. It's almost like...
It immediately tastes like a really thick, like a black licorice.
Yeah.
And then oak.
And it just dries your palate out. Like, it just dries your palate out entirely. And that's fine. That's, if that's what you like, that's what it is.
It's so much on like the nutmeg and like oak and spice but like all the dry versions of everything.
Yeah,
like,
and the nose is straight up dusty. Like it smells like dry oak chips.
Yeah,
and
the 18 I remember is having some fruit characters to it.
It's bright and fruity and rich, and there's brown sugar in there.
Yeah,
it's just everything that you want a rye whiskey to be, and it's so well balanced. And so this is not a bad rye, but I guarantee you there's ryes on my shelf that are a fraction of this price that are better. And it was the most I've spent on a bottle in a very, very long time. I never stretched for $300. The only reason I did was because the 18. And when I opened this, I was pissed off. And
Yeah.
it's just not worth $330, in my opinion.
No. You know, it's funny. I've tried a lot of whiskey for a lot of different price points. And the most I've ever spent myself is 400.
Yeah.
And like I barely ever go past 200. You know, like it's so rare that something is, you know, I mean, it depends how much money you make, but still.
Yeah, I mean, I don't make it. I'm a professor, like,
right?
So this is a stretch.
Yeah. So you know, it's kind of at that cusp of like it reached the most maturity that it could before it started to degrade, and they pulled it at the right time. And the 20 is just, it's a little, whether that's where it was in the warehouse or the barrels or what.
I mean, this could be an entirely different lot they picked because it's all sourced. It's hard to say.
And let's be honest, 20 years is the minimum age statement. We don't know how much of the product is 20 years old versus 21, 22, 23, 24-year-old barrels blended in there.
Right.
Because they got too oaky and they're like, we need to blend these out, you know? Yeah. So it's just, it is what it is. It's a very unique rye for sure. And I think like if you're someone that legitimately really likes like the Woodford 17, very fine, very rare, you know, something like that on the very oaky side, which I often do more than you. But even for me, this just tastes like a whiskey past its prime.
Yeah. If I told you this was $150, we'd be like, all right, that's pretty sweet. Yeah. Right. and if I pour this for somebody who's a rye fan, they're going to like it. But I guarantee you, if I pour it next to the 18, if I pour it next to some of the other bottles that I have that are in the 8 to 10 year range, they're probably going to be better. It's just not complex to me. It's very dry. It's tannic. It's oaky. And that really mutes a lot of the flavors. And so for a $300 bottle, for something you're really stretching on, it just wasn't exciting to me.
I don't know if I would say it's not complex, but I would say it's not dynamic.
Yeah, I guess that's what I mean. There's just not a whole lot of different.
I think there's a lot of layers there. They're just very squashed together. It doesn't have a wide like the flavor doesn't evolve in your mouth that. You kind of get them all simultaneously, and you know, I feel like what I expect with an older whiskey is that it kind of has like an entry, a mid palate, a finish, and it feels like it's evolving as you drink it. And this doesn't feel like
it tastes the same in the beginning and the end.
Yeah. All right. That's a really good one. That reminds me, I don't have it with me, but stuff that I've had that I reviewed on Malt Mondays, like the Glenlivet 25-year-old or the oh my gosh, what was it? Oh man, I'd have to look it up. There were a couple 25-year-old scotches that I reviewed that my dad let me borrow the bottle. And so I didn't purchase them, but they were like $400, $500 bottles.
Yeah.
And they're like 43% ABV. And just like, this is just like completely inferior to like most $100 15-year-old scotches that you can get, you know, like it's just that number. They get to charge more. Yeah.
And we've talked about that. And more age is not necessarily better.
No.
And I think this was a really good example. And unfortunately, I got caught in the trap of really liking the younger one. And I was like, well, damn, if I like that one, I bet I'm going to like this one. And no, like, it's not that I don't like it, but it's not good enough to warrant that price tag. And
I'm proud of you, James.
That's what scared me away from the 21.
Yeah, I'm proud of you because I bet the 21 will be the best thing you've ever tasted, and you'll never try it.
Never try it. Like, screw that bottle. I'm not going to pay that.
No, but I'm proud of you because I think there's a strong urge when you're the one that dished out the money to justify it.
To validate it.
Validate it.
Yeah, there's tons of that. Tons of that. I've gone over to friends' house and they pour stuff that's like a $500 bottle and they're like, oh, you know, it's It's not what I was expecting, but it's still good. It's kind of like, no, this is garbage. Like you should just admit that this is not good and get over it. But yeah, this one was one that like immediately I was just disappointed. I couldn't avoid it.
All right. So to wrap up,
I have one more, so not wrapping up yet.
whoa. Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Damn.
You want me to go first, and then we'll
Yeah,
wrap up
you
with
should.
this? All
You
right.
should, because
So my next one, this is more of a cautionary tale of just don't be stupid. Like if you know that you don't love something, don't steer away. Don't steer away from that, right? So this is Smoke Wagon Uncut Unfiltered. And I think honestly what got me on this was the Uncut Unfiltered. Okay, listen, then I was like, oh, that sounds kind of fun. But I knew going into this that this was MGP.
They saw you coming a mile away, James.
I know. I knew going into this that it was MGP. But Smoke Wagon does such a good job with marketing. Like they really, really do. The bottles are cool. The stories behind it are cool. The guy is cool. Like there's a lot about the brand that was interesting. And at the time I bought this, they were making a lot of noise. And Uncut Unfiltered had gotten some like buzz in some places, and there's different batches and different releases, but generally it was getting a lot of good feedback. And I was like, well, it's MGP though. But I have had outstanding MGP before. And so I was like, whatever, I'll get it. So it was like an $80 or $90 bottle. You pay shipping, it's $100. So it wasn't a cheap bottle. And I opened it up. So you haven't tried this, so go ahead and try it. And actually, Jonathan Richardson mentioned Andrew Sims. I opened it with Andrew and another friend who was in the bourbon at the time. And we were all excited, and we took some pictures of it, like next to a tree. Dumb bourbon shit, right?
Yeah.
Like dumb bourbon shit.
Classic.
Yeah,
Take a
yeah.
picture of it on some rocks, a tree. Yeah.
Yeah, like, oh, look at this bottle I found out in
Honestly,
nature.
I gotta say it's a badass bottle.
Oh yeah, that's part of
Like-
the deal. That's part of what I fell for, Paul. Like it's a badass bottle.
It's really cool. This and the Lock, Stock, and Barrel, like, oh man,
Yeah.
they're just perfect eye candy on
Yeah.
the shelf.
Yeah. And so we opened this up and we were all excited about it, and we poured it and we were like, tastes like MGP. Like it just tastes like kind of a generic MGP bourbon. There's absolutely nothing special about it. I had 8, 10, 12 other bottles of MGP that tasted exactly like it.
Except this one's uncut and unfiltered.
Except it's uncut and unfiltered. But it just wasn't special. And I guess, my first story was really hype. My second one was, kind of getting caught up in the age statement and getting caught up in the previous releases. This one was just an example of me not sticking to my guns.
Yep.
Like I know that
No
it's
pun intended.
exactly. I know it's going to have to be outstanding MGP for me to like it. It's probably going to have to be a single barrel. I knew that. Damn it. I knew that. But I bought it anyway because of the hype around it and the talk around it. And I was just disappointed because I knew better.
Now I will say I've had a couple versions of this. Because they've released this more than once.
Oh,
right?
there's tons of
Like, I
batches of
mean, there's tons of batches. I've had other batches of this that I think are more impressive, but not a lot more.
No, this
And
one's
so-
kind of oddly barbecue-y. Like there's a barbecue
Yeah.
sauce note in it. There's a little bit of smoke. It's just kind of weird. And then
I do-
underneath that is very clear MGP.
I do think they missed an opportunity with, the fact that they called it Smoke Wagon to actually have a smoky character to it.
Yeah.
And I'm waiting for someone to do a smoked bourbon right. No one's done it yet. Like,
Guess who has one of those, Paul?
I
I might have one of those. Yeah,
Good.
I might have one of those.
Because like I feel like every time I've seen a smoked bourbon or American whiskey esque kind of thing, it's something like the Whistle Pig
Oh God,
bull crap that they just
the
pump-
smokestack or
the
whatever.
smokestack. Gosh,
We
it's
tried that.
so
at that event.
garbage.
Wow, that
Like-
was so bad. Yeah.
Like, I mean, that's in the running. That's up there with, Defiant Single Malt.
Oh, it was
from-
bad. It was bad.
Which is really bad. Which, speaking of Greg, who's in the chat, was with me when I bought the Defiant Single Malt.
Oh,
and
nice.
I bought like 3 bottles with him. We opened them all up, and I'm like, "Holy shit,
These
so
are all
bad."
bad. Yeah.
but like, I feel like someone's got to figure out a way to do it right, because I don't think peat is the way to
No.
smoke
No.
American whiskey, And I don't think this artificial liquid smoke crap pumped into the barrel or
No,
is
that's
the right way to do
horrible.
it.
I will
So-
say this. I think I don't want to give away too much, but I am buying ones that have smoked grains in the bourbon mash bill. And I think the key to it is one, it has to be subtle.
Yep.
And two, I think you have to pair it with a sweetness. So something like an applewood smoke, I think
Yeah.
is stellar. And you just have to do it lightly. And if you apply it to the grain, if you apply it to the corn, if you apply it to the rye, I think it plays out really, really well. The mistake that American whiskey made when they did smoke stuff is they tried to mimic peat.
Right.
And you just can't mimic peat. Like,
No.
you can't do it.
And it just doesn't work with the American whiskey profile.
No.
in my
So
mind.
you end up with something that tastes like burnt sticks or like a barbecue campfire type of thing, or something that's just like way like you put liquid smoke in it.
Yeah.
Right. The stuff that we're buying, we're buying 2 bourbons, hopefully, that have the smoked grains in it. And it's super, super subtle, but it just adds a little bit of an earthy characteristic to the background. Almost like if you had it in a barrel for a long time and it picked up a little bit more barrel char note, and it balances it out perfectly. And then you add in kind of the unique wood characteristics that they use in the smoking, and it's killer. So
Yeah.
there are people who are figuring it out. It's just slow because everybody wants to mimic what works, and you can't mimic peat.
Yeah. And, peat, the addition of peat to whiskey was originally, it's intended with malt
Yeah.
whiskey, not with bourbon. So speaking of peat, we're going to jump
This is a
to
good introduction.
and these are unlike my other regrets, which were more disappointing than anything. In my opinion, these are just bad. So I thought it'd be funny to make you drink them. So
Great.
um,
By the way, has anybody in the chat mentioned one that they're like disappointed
actually,
by?
we didn't ask. So yeah, for those of you watching, let us know any whiskeys you've bought that you were severely disappointed in and you regret.
And Jonathan, if you say 2 souls, I'm going to jump through the screen and attack you. So don't do that.
Well, he did say Andalusia Striker is incredible.
Oh, okay.
What is that? I'm not familiar with that.
I brought you some Andalusia samples. I brought you some single malt samples from Andalusia that were smoked. They had some smoked grains in them.
Ooh, actually, I might remember that now.
Yeah.
I don't remember the name, but I remember. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'd be interested to try that again because I definitely remember Westland, but Westland was single malt,
Yes.
and so tomato.
Sure. Yeah, Andalusia's getting a little bit of a buzz right now, and I've actually looked into them, tried some of their products.
All right. So to wrap this up with disappointing bottles, we have Connemara.
Oh boy. So
Now, James,
what is this?
when you think of Irish whiskey,
Yes.
is the first thing that comes to mind single malt
Sure.
and peated?
No. Definitely not. No. No. I don't know.
So
How many peated Irish whiskeys are there?
at least one.
At least one. Good to know.
So I remember when I was working at Dorn's, we had this a long time ago. Oh, that was a good cork pot though.
It is a good pork. Oh, that's
That's a good-
nice.
that's a good
that
one.
reminds me of the cork pop from
So, hey.
the intro.
All right, it's gone up from 0 out of 10 to 1 out of 10 stars.
Good. So, did you buy this from Dorn's?
Yes. So this was one of my first purchases when I worked there.
So you've had it for that.
Had it, dude. I've had it.
it's like
It's
like
full.
legit 85% full or 90% full. You haven't worked at Dorn's for like 6 years.
At least.
And so this is
Yeah.
probably what, 8-10 years old, and you have barely drank any of it.
Yep.
That's awesome.
So what's funny to me about this, so this comes in a whopping 80 proof.
Wow. It's gonna be dense. But you
and
do have
I
a cast
I think this
version
one was
too,
like
right?
I think this one was like $60 or $50, something like that. It's aged 12 years though, so at least it's got an
Oh,
age
yeah.
statement. And I will say it's certainly an interesting product.
There is
but-
zero color to this.
Yeah,
Like zero.
which lends me to think that it's natural color.
Yeah. I mean,
because-
well, you wouldn't artificially color it to look like pee.
not even
Like
not
what-
even. I mean,
like
that,
well hydrated pee.
I mean that's just like
no.
that's basically clear. So yeah, for me, this is just an odd whiskey. that doesn't really work because Irish whiskey is triple distilled, and once you put single malt with it, it's missing that spice kind of character that I get with Irish whiskey from the non-malted barley.
Right.
And
So
it's just so one note.
this is the Nika 12.
Yeah. But with some peat.
But with some peat. It's the exact same thing. There's nothing to it except
Maybe we figured out where Nika 12 sourced from.
it's from here. It tastes exactly the same from start to finish. It's super, super thin. It's watery. And the only flavor that lingers is kind of a bitter peat note. But there's just nothing going on.
But even the peat note is like, it's like the least characterful peat I've ever tasted. It's
peat.
Yeah. It boggles my mind.
Now, could you put this in a cocktail where you're just looking to add a little bit of smoke to the cocktail?
I guess so.
Like that's the only because it's really there's no other character to it, right? It's not sweet, it's not fruity, it's not heavy or rich or dense. So the only thing it's going to carry over is kind of a light smoke.
Yeah. No. Yeah, I should have just dump it out there. Yeah, that's a good idea.
So now we got
I was like, I don't really want to drink the rest of that, so.
No.
And then I brought the cast strength version for you.
Oh, good.
Just to make sure.
Just to double down.
Now this one's a little lower. This one
you have had a little bit more than this, but you bought this at the same time.
Same time.
And how much was the cast strength? Ooh,
yeah,
man,
good court pops. It's the shape of the bottle. You get the baritone note.
Oh, yeah.
I want to say the cast strength version was maybe like $80.
So just a tad more.
It wasn't like a ton more expensive.
And had you heard of them before when you bought this?
No,
because I've never heard of this name.
No, I hadn't. And it's just one of those things where I don't know what I thought I was gonna get.
You just saw unique bottles, but I mean, at this time too, like,
but it's just
you were really young.
I was very new,
and you hadn't tried a whole lot of stuff.
Right.
You just had old people like me bringing in random samples to you, but you hadn't had a ton of experience at this point.
And this one is at 57.9% natural cast strength, undiluted with no chill filtration or coloring. Connemara cast strength captures the true essence of Connemara peated single malt. Truly a unique Irish whiskey and a real connoisseur's choice. I'll say it. If you like Irish whiskey and you like how light it is relative to Scotch, this certainly captures the lightness.
This somehow is even lighter.
I know.
It's cast strength, and it's still lighter. The nose is less peat and a slightly more undefined fruitiness to it.
This one's drinkable.
So it's more single malty to me than the previous one.
But mostly what I get on this when I drink it is just heat. I don't get it's
whoa.
Yeah, like it's very hot for 57.
Oh, dude, the aftertaste on that is garbage.
It's really
That's
bad.
really bad.
Yeah.
That's not peat. That's like you just that's like you burnt rubber.
That's what I'm saying is like somehow they
you have fast cars. If you burn rubber, that's what it sort of tastes like, right?
Yeah, it is. I mean, somehow they managed to
Wow, that's bad.
To not really get any cask or grain flavor.
Oh, that's horrible.
They only got like some of the peat and it's
burnt rubber.
And it's not I don't know. It's impressive to me how mediocre.
So this is going to be the first time I say this on the podcast. I would rather drink the lower proof version.
Yes.
Because the flavor is not as intensely bad as what it is at the cast strength level.
Somehow I enjoy the cast strength slightly more just because at least I can taste something.
It's so bad though.
Because I like peat, it's not as bad to me. But I just remember.
But that's not good peat.
No, it's not.
No, it's burnt.
Yeah, it's burnt.
It tastes like burnt, and you just get more of the burn because of. And I think that's what's the problem here is it's the combination.
I'm just a masochist.
You just hate yourself. It's the combination of the extra peat or the more burn note and the higher proof. We got some comments in there.
Yes.
I saw some things pop up.
So, Jonathan Richardson says his biggest bottle regret is Bib and Tucker.
Oh, yeah.
Great bottle for a drain cleaner.
Dude,
I had only drain pour ever.
I wonder if he fell for the bottle, because the bottle's pretty sweet with Bib and Tucker.
It is.
And I remember it kind of looks
I was almost
school
fooled
medicine
when it came
like,
out,
you know. And I tried it at a bar. I was lucky enough to like not buy it, and I tried it at a bar, and I was like, yeah, this isn't very good.
Yeah, I heard a lot of negative reviews about it when it first came out. Like, I almost bought one because I'm like, oh, that looks sick. It's the same thing as Smoke Wagon.
Yeah.
It's got the
embossed bottle.
It literally looks like you pulled it out of an episode of Smoke Gun, or
like
an old Western.
Like an old Western movie, and it looks like an old medicine bottle of some sort.
Yep.
Yeah, it's very much hypey.
Josh Adams says, I got a 200 ml of Talisker 10 that was straight up burnt rubber. Now, see, that's surprising to me because Talisker 10 is pretty mild. We had that on here with Chad. Last time.
Yeah.
Talisker 10 is pretty mild on the peat and usually pretty reliable as a Diageo product, which we love Diageo. Diageo, you make fantastic
you make good stuff.
You
make everything.
And I love how consistent it is. It's not boring at all.
No, not at all.
But Talisker 10 to me, I'm surprised by that because it's usually light enough on the peat that I wouldn't think you would get a burnt rubber character.
No, so sometimes I've gotten that before, and I wonder if it's transfer. So I remember I was at Dorn's and he got a new product and it was Butcher something.
Yes, I was literally thinking the exact same thing.
Yeah,
Butcher Block.
Yeah,
and the bourbon.
And he poured it for me. And he was like, "What do you think?" I was like, "Dude, it tastes like a garden hose."
Yeah,
like it legit straight up tastes like a garden hose. Yeah. And he tried it and he was like, "Holy shit, it tastes like a garden hose." And I wonder sometimes if that's in the transfer, if something like that happens, because I had it later at another place and it didn't taste like a garden hose. So sometimes it might just be bad luck, right?
Yeah.
Like you just might get a bad batch of something, particularly if it's kind of a more of a boutique style or more of a limited release kind of product.
What I imagine happens, because like they're using a plastic hose to like pull the whiskey out of the barrel into the bottle or something, depending on their process. What I imagine happens sometimes is it's 5 o'clock and they stop filling bottles. And then that bourbon sits in that hose
and just
from Friday to Monday. And there's like 1 or 2 bottles, or maybe half a bottle somewhere. It's just the hose bourbon. And
hose whiskey.
Right. Like and it's like, because that's the thing, right? Is like if you put stuff in a plastic container very briefly, it doesn't really taste like it.
Yeah.
But think about like when you take like a plastic bottle of water and you open it and you like let it sit for a while and then you come back and drink it, it tastes like plastic more than like when it was fresh.
That's interesting, because my thought was maybe it was the first run with that new hose.
Oh, that's also
and there was
possible.
just like a little bit of like
they didn't wash it out as much.
Yeah, and you're just getting like fresh hose.
Yeah,
right.
That's
Whereas
possible.
As later on, once you get used hose, it doesn't taste as bad, right? But that's that's a good point.
Because I mean, plastic does leach.
Yeah, it's probably one or the other,
point.
right? It's like the first run through that damn hose, or it's been sitting in there for a day.
Yeah, it'd be interesting to know. But I remember that specific whiskey because Tommy poured that for me too, and he's like, "What do you think?" And I was like, "Well, it tastes like plastic." So there's that.
Yeah, and there was nothing about it that should have indicated that. But yeah, sometimes you just get weird stuff. Well, I'm glad that we ended on a really bad note. That's
I mean,
fun.
It was fitting. I will say, like, as it's still bad. Yeah.
So you were
I'm like trying to find nicer things to say about
it. Trying to validate it, Paul. Like
bad.
You were proud of me for admitting that my $300 bottle is not that great. I'm very proud of you that you haven't just dumped those down a drain yet. Because I would have dumped them down a drain a long time ago.
Well, see, I keep them around for occasions such as this when I want to demonstrate to someone what like a bad
why
whiskey
not
is.
To do this. Yeah,
Right.
Yeah. I would have gotten rid of those a long time ago.
Now, closing thoughts on the Lock, Stock, and Barrel 20, though. If you're one of those people, as I see so often on the Facebook groups, trying to sneak bourbon past your wife, don't go for this bottle. It's got this jangly little
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
Like, you're not sneaking that by.
No, you're not. It's like a cat with a little bell.
Right.
On
It's like it's got a little bell on it.
You're not getting that by anybody.
Alternatively, if you have teenagers that you're trying that you don't want pouring your whiskey,
they'll hear.
That's
you'll
a
hear
great way. You should just buy a bunch of these and glue them to your other bottles.
And they're too dumb to like hold it up while
Yeah,
they
I'm
pour
sure.
it. So yeah.
Oh man.
No,
That
good
was
show.
fun, though.
Good show. Yeah. So lessons learned, right? Don't fall for hype. Stick to your guns on certain things.
Don't pay over MSRP.
Don't trust just because it's a limited release that it's going to be better.
Yep.
And I guess when you first start whiskey, don't buy a bunch of stuff you've never heard of.
That too.
Yeah.
Yeah. Or even if you've been around it for a while.
Still don't do it.
Do a little bit of research maybe.
Yeah.
All right. Well, let's see. Yeah. Oh, Josh Adams said maybe it's the small bottle syndrome. That it was a full size bottle, but that does happen. There is the small bottle flavor, but if it's aged in a small barrel and then put in a small bottle, it counteracts.
Yeah.
We figured that out. So,
Good
all right. Well, thank you guys for tuning in and watching. Until next time, I've been Paul. He's been James.
Cheers.
Cheers. And remember, drink, share, enjoy.